Welcome to Behind the Grind. I'm Matt Dahl, and joining us today, a Harlem native who you can catch on 107.5, The Game Columbia, and the Executive Network over on YouTube. He's one of the OGs of the fantasy industry, if you know what I'm saying. His writing has been featured on the who's who, the Mount Rushmore of sports media, from Sports Illustrated to the New York Daily News to The Athletic, and of course, Yahoo Sports, just to name a few. Please welcome Cory Parson. How you doing, Cory?
What's going on? Glad to be on Behind the Grind. I'm glad to have a chance to chop it up with you, you know what I'm saying? And, talk a little bit about the journey and, what we've done in the past and what we're going to be trying to do in the future and, you know what I mean, kind of where this whole thing is going. So definitely want to give a shout out to you for putting this platform together and, giving people a chance to come on here and talk and, do the stuff besides not just, who do you like in the fifth round?
It's one of these timeless type shows here. We're going to talk about your journey because your journey is very specific to you. And there's little bits and pieces of people who are watching the show for the first time that maybe are trying to get in the industry, or maybe they've hit that wall, because we've all hit that wall at some point. You can be like, you know what? This happened to Cory. Let's just see what we can do for ourselves here and move past this. So there's little bits and pieces from each and every show. And I can't wait to learn what some of the things that worked for you that I can maybe apply to my own journey myself. Now, we know, I mentioned one of the OGs of this year in the Kings Classic. That's kind of where we met. The Kings Classic is coming up again here in Canton, Ohio. I'm excited. Bob Lung puts on a heck of a show there. The who's who of these drafts, and you do a few of these. You got the Tout Wars that take place there in New York. Jake Seeley kind of gets that going on. You got the Kings Classic. I mean, how many of these big-time analyst drafts do you get yourself involved in?
I think I've done just about all of them. You know what I'm saying? Been a part of them in any kind of ways, playing in them, because when I was coming up, that was kind of my, okay, I've made it. I've been invited to one of these big leagues and, competed well and stuff like that with some of the best of the best. So, those were some of the moments, coming up in this industry that you feel good about. And now on the other side of it, I'm like, my goodness, another entry to one of these leagues. But no, I've done, I like to call myself, I don't do much fantasy baseball. I like to call myself the Jackie Robinson of Tout Wars because I broke the color barrier in Tout Wars. You know what I'm saying? That should go on my acceptance speech when I go into the Fantasy Sports Hall of Fame. But obviously the Kings Classic, you know what I'm saying? Jake Seeley's Flex League. I've been out of, to Arizona, when I was working with SiriusXM Fantasy to produce the labor auctions and draft that they have out there. So, really all through some of the big time moments in fantasy sports, either as a participant, a broadcaster, sometime even as an auctioneer, you know what I'm saying? So, but no, definitely love those events. For a long time, Tout Wars was my favorite event in fantasy. And then I think recently, you know what I'm saying, the Kings Classic is starting to catch up because it's a real good time, real good idea. And obviously, I was one of the first people that Bob Lung floated the idea about well over a decade ago, and to see him pull it together and pull it off and do a lot of cool things with it, I think that was pretty cool. You know what I'm saying? So shout out to him. I hope it keeps growing. You know what I'm saying? And I have a feeling we'll get back and touch on some of the things around the Kings Classic at some point.
For me, it's that auction draft. I mean, the energy that comes with that each and every time, it just hits a little bit different, a live auction draft. Now, you mentioned that acceptance speech perhaps there for the FSWA, breaking that color barrier. So maybe you're walking down to accept the award. Maybe you get your little plaque there, your bust, so to speak. What intro music are they going to play as you walk down the aisle to claim what is rightfully yours?
That's interesting. I think there's a couple of ways you can go about it. You know what I mean? But if you really want to talk about, I guess up until this point, you know what I'm saying, the Roto Experts in the Morning, the program with me, Scott Engel, and Adam Ronis on SiriusXM Fantasy, when they were the best thing in fantasy sports, they've fallen a long way. But when we were doing that show, the intro music for that show was New York Groove by Ace Frehley of the group Kiss. Scott Engel was a big Kiss guy. So I think an ode to that show, because when we were allowed to do it, there was nothing better on terrestrial radio or on radio, period, than the Roto Experts, in those lead ups to football seasons and stuff like that. So, yeah, I would definitely give a shout out to that show. And that's why I would use that music right there.
That music, it's right. It's good. Now, I know you've got yourself some kids. We're going to come back to the whole kids situation here a little bit later. I know you're a proud papa yourself. Now, in that whole course of parenting, there's certain songs that you're like, oh, really? Here we go again. You're playing that again. And then secretly, you're like, I kind of want to hear that song again. So is there that guilty pleasure song for you, Cory, that you've kind of heard wherever that happens to be? People like, you listen to that? Is there a song like that out there for you?
When you bring in the kids aspect into it, you know what I'm saying? Obviously when you think back to songs from the youth of my children, I would have to go with my son. It was what was it? The Crank That Soldier Boy, you know what I'm saying? And then with my daughter, this is gonna be funny, is Have You Ever Built a Snowman? You know what I'm saying? I know it kind of word for word because we were not allowed to take the Frozen soundtrack out of the CD player, or whatever we were using at the time. In the cards could have still been, because what ended up happening, Matt. She ended up like taking the CD out the store, right? I forgot we was Best Buy or something, somewhere like that, and we went in the store. I don't know. We was looking for a TV or a refrigerator. Probably was window shopping. You know what I'm saying? Because we wasn't high rolling at this point. You know what I mean? So what ended up happening was we in there, we chilling, and we leaving out the store, and I got my daughter in my hand, and next thing you know, I feel her slapping me on my head with something, and I look around and I'm like, the Frozen soundtrack. She picked it up in her 3-year-old self and walked up the store with it, not realizing that that's shoplifting. So I didn't go back in there and pay for it, but we got our money worth.
Oh, hey, each to their own on that. She got her CD, so that's all that really matters. I mean, you weren't going to be able to return that, right? You weren't going to be able to bring that back. Once she has it, it's over.
No doubt. You know what I'm saying? Once we made it to the car, I realized the police wasn't behind us. I was like, you know what? I'm not going back in there. So if they come and get me, I'll give you $15 or $20, whatever that was.
You know what? I don't think there's still people out there with like Blockbuster DVDs and VHSs out there still to this day. So I think you might be okay when it comes to that. Now,
before I got into the industry, right? I used to work in Washington, D.C. I lived in D.C. for 11 years. Shout out to the Washington, D.C. area. Shout out to Prince George County. Man, we're gonna have a good time with this one. You know what I'm saying? This is your Club Shay Shay Cat Williams moment. You know what I'm saying? We about to go crazy. We about to go. We gonna have a good time on this one, Matt. So basically, living in the Washington, D.C. area, and the football fandom out there is real strong. And it's really centered inside the Beltway with those Washington Commander fans. I came up out there in a time when the Commanders were never really good. But I remember Sean Taylor's death when he was killed. You know what I'm saying? And to see what that football community went through in that moment was something that I always remember. You know what I'm saying? But definitely I wanted to mention that about being in the DC area.
Sean Taylor is one of those players like I grew up watching, and then just the way he hit and how he played, that controlled aggression, I guess is the best way to kind of put when you look at the way he kind of played there. So we talk about Sean Taylor there, a big part of my life kind of growing up. Loved watching him. I mean, I wish we could have seen a little bit more. Everyone talks about athletes that you're like, I wish we could have seen a little bit more. And Sean Taylor is one of those guys for me that's right up there. Now,
no, because he was on a kind of a trend where he would have won a couple of defensive players of the year. He was the best player on the field. And this is a guy coming from a guy that's a diehard Dallas Cowboy fan. You know what I'm saying? When he was playing at his height, at his best, there was probably not a better defender in the NFL than he was. He would have been an all-time great. He would have had a gold jacket, all-time great. You know what I'm saying? So shout out to Sean Taylor.
Yeah, the word generational gets thrown out too much. Sean Taylor was a generational type safety there, generational type defender. Now, growing up in that whole New York area there, I know you're a huge New York fan. We're going to touch on this. a little bit later here right away, but how did you get into sports? What was your first interaction with sports like growing up?
All right. So first interaction was the catch. You know what I'm saying? I grew up. My father is a Dallas Cowboy fan. I followed him's footsteps in that. It may have been end up being one of the worst decisions I ever made in my life. But with that being said, the catch. I had been no more than 4 or 5 years old, and I kind of understood the game, whatever. And me and my dad sitting there watching it. And when Dwight Clark catches that football in the back of the end zone, it like broke my little 4-year-old heart. You know what I'm saying? And I just cried and cried and cried and cried. But in that moment, I gained a love affair with team sports. You know what I'm saying? Particularly football, and ended up growing into all sports as well. But that initial love for the Dallas Cowboys and Tony Dorsett, you know what I'm saying? And growing up and then taking that into the NFL. And then obviously learning and starting to become fans of NFL broadcasters. You know what I'm saying? Whether it was Brent Musburger, Irv Cross, Jimmy the Greek, you know what I mean? So always liking the media side of it is kind of like was able to marry those two worlds together is something that was always interesting to me as a kid. But really, my love of the Dallas Cowboys and football in general is where it kind of started at. And then when you grow up in New York, you know what I'm saying? When you grow up in like that Northeast, New York City, it's a lot of sports fans, you know what I'm saying? And then going to like the parochial schools in that era, you know what I mean? With guys like legendary type dudes, you know what I'm saying? Like Felipe Lopez was in school when I was in school. You have Shamgard, legendary guy who made the move. You see Cam and Mace in sports broadcasting right now. So really growing up in that era, in that area, in that era, kind of honed it because like you even see Stephen A. Smith, who's from Queens, he'll talk about it now. Matt, we were at the lunchroom, at the lunch table. I went to an all boys Catholic high school in the Bronx, and we were just at the lunch table just talking shit about each other's teams. You know what I'm saying? It was first take at the lunch table every day throughout my high school years, and you had to sharpen your skills that way. You know what I'm saying? So, and then growing up, even though I'm into cars, that's why I got this Michael Jordan behind me. But I grew up a New York Knicks fan. You know what I'm saying? So, having to defend the Knicks. So, you really sharpen those skills as a debater, as a sports guy. You know what I'm saying? So that kind of laid the foundation. And then obviously going to sleep with the radio under my pillow to catch the Yankees late games when they were on the West Coast. And, one particular road trip, you wake up and it's Imus in the morning. And I was like, bingo, that's it. Morning radio. That's what I want to do.
I love that you mentioned the radio because I don't think not enough people appreciate listening to the radio going to bed, that old transistor radio. I used to listen to the hockey games, the old WHL games here in Medicine Hat, and it was kind of like that comfort for me. It was one of those things that kind of put me to sleep. I know some other people listen to Vince Scully there calling the ball game. It just kind of hit a little bit different. Now, when you were growing up, you obviously played some sports along the way. Sports is like the great equalizer. No matter what your situation happens to be, you can kind of change everything in that moment. So when you go back to little Cory there, way back when, how did sports develop you as a youth and kind of help you get to where you are today?
Well, the competitive nature of it, the learning, the teamwork, the camaraderie, you know what I'm saying? Knowing what it takes to make it, to come together as a team. I think those are things, but like I said, it kind of harkens really back to, the sharpening of the wit. You know what I mean? Because you get into those battles, nobody wants to look foolish. You know what I'm saying? So I was never really a guy that was, going to be on the varsity basketball team. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't going to happen. I'm not athletically gifted like that. I don't have a extra bone in my foot. You know what I mean? But I have the ability to rock the mic, Matt. You know what I'm saying? And I got the ability to talk about and analyze these sports. So really, little Cory was sharpening his skills, watching and listening to the School to Phil Rizzuta. You know what I'm saying? And learning about, reading the daily news and seeing the point spread and looking at the transactions and seeing the hero and the GOAT and, the legendary cartoons, the daily news and WFAN radio station big part of me growing up in New York as a sports fan.
We had Adam Ronis on the show here a couple weeks back, and we kind of talked about reading the cereal boxes, the box scores. We may have touched on his black book a little bit too, but that's neither here nor there. But one thing I did ask him,
it's weak. Adam Ronis' black book is weak.
He knew right away that you know exactly what I was talking about when I brought that up. But one thing that we all know is I go Yankees, Mets, Giants, Jets, Nets, Knicks, Rangers, Islanders. We can throw the Dallas Cowboys in there. We're not going to right now, but those New York teams combined for over 100 seasons without a title.
Yeah.
And I'm not choosing to add the Cowboys there, but as a native New Yorker, I know we kind of gave it to the Celtics fans there about jumping on a Kyrie Irving doll not too long ago, how badly the Celtics fans want to be New York fans. But what is this like when we see this kind of futility? Because Yankees fans aren't really used to this. This is a championship team, and they're right there again this year.
Let's start with the Yankees. It's the Houston Astros have been better. They've just been better. It's not like the Yankees have had a couple of seasons where they dropped the ball, didn't miss the playoffs. I'm not the biggest Aaron Boone guy, to be 100% honest with you. But, if you want, I can get it. You know what I'm saying? Trying to remain consistent. Obviously, I think this season right here is going to be different. But really, the Houston Astros, the cheating ass Houston Astros, was a juggernaut. You know what I'm saying? They cheated, and they won championships. They eliminated the Yankees. You had the back end of the Alex Rodriguez drama. The pitchers didn't add up. Some of the pitching free agents didn't add up to what they were supposed to be. And obviously, the boss ain't the boss no more. So that plays into it as well. So that's from the Yankees standpoint. The Knicks ain't been shit for 30 years. Probably the worst run organization in pro sports. Now, they've hit it with the current administration, but from the time Jeff Van Gundy left until the time Tom Thibodeau got there, it was a fucking shit show. You know what I'm saying? And I'm one of the people that will tell you about it. You know what I mean? So I used to do shows across the street at FNTSY. That was a shit show too. But I used to do shows for FNTSY, and we were right across the street from Madison Square Garden. And they were more worried about what I was saying on the radio than they were worried about the product on the damn court. That's the problem with Madison Square Garden. But now it's looking good. Things are going well. The city has fallen in love with the Knicks again, so that's good. The Brooklyn Nets, I don't give a fuck about them. I have zero interest in that. That's an ABA team that came from Jersey. The New York Mets, I could care less. You know what I'm saying? Some losers from Queens. The Jets and the Giants is interesting. The Giants have won a championship in every decade. They lucked up twice with Eli Manning, catch on the helmet, Mario Manningham out of bounds. But you got to give them their props. But they're a complete shit show now. You know what I'm saying? They've been one of the worst teams in the NFL. They actually think Daniel Jones is hitting on something. They kept Eli Manning for too long. They got rid of Odell Beckham when they should have tried to build around him. A disaster. And the Jets, one of the laughing stocks. So it doesn't look good. It's not going to be like Dallas, who had the Rangers, and then you got the Mavericks. The Cowboys are never going to win shit, though. But you really see that it has been very difficult times for New York sports teams. And honestly speaking, the best team right now is the Knicks, and they'll continue to be good. I think the Yankees will be back in the World Series this year, but the Jets and the Giants are a long way from being relevant.
Yeah, it's painful to watch that from the New York perspective for football. The Rangers are right there too. I mean, they should have been.
But I feel you. Yeah, mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were right there. I kind of lost a lot of it for the Rangers there when that whole Montreal Canadiens, New York Rangers, Kreider, Carey Price type situation.
Yeah,
it sent the Rangers to the Stanley Cup, and that kind of hurt me. I was a big Habs fan, a big Carey Price fan. That kind of changed my Montreal Canadiens projection way back when. Okay. Now I got a question here from one of our listeners here, and it's a would you rather? Okay, would you rather one more NFL draft night on air with Dane and Emery, or a 4,000-yard, 32 touchdown season from McCorkle Jones?
We would, if we could do that one more time. That was. And you see, Matt, this once again, you see what's happening in this industry, right? And this industry's not in a good spot right now. There's no reason for anybody to bullshit like it is. And maybe 2 or 3 companies is doing well. You want to get in this industry, do it yourself, because you really can't trust too many of these companies because they've gotten so corporate, and then it's really just one person running the show that's getting money. Everybody else is just doing work for nothing. But too many of the suits got involved in this industry and messed it up, and that's what happened in a lot of cases. But when you let the people that have the talent do the work, you get what me, Emery, and Dane did on those legendary draft nights. You know what I'm saying? And FNCSY, we rocked those every single time we did it. It was some of the most fantastic broadcasts. And you know what? That format that we did for the first time back in 2018, everybody's copied that since. So, there's a little, you're welcome. Everybody that's doing the format that we did, kind of turning it into a draft party live event as we go through the picks. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I definitely would like to have one of those experiences again, because you definitely want to have good times with talented people without the suits and the corporates getting in the way.
It's one of those legacy projects where you're just proud of being part of that in that moment. It's one of those things you'd like to continue going on. A great group of people there the whole time. Now, that was a great decision to kind of get that party started there. But what's a decision that changed the trajectory of your life? Maybe in the industry or maybe outside of the industry, the biggest decision that you made that changed the trajectory of your life?
Well, getting into the industry, first and foremost, changed the trajectory of my life. I didn't come in here fresh out of college, you know what I'm saying, and write some articles and start a website and get with a company and develop an algorithm. That's not my path. I'm a shit talker, you know what I'm saying? I got into this business to talk shit about sports on the radio. The fantasy thing just kind of happened to drop into my lap. But what we did, the trajectory change was the Roto Experts in the Morning. That was the one that really launched the Fantasy Executive and my broadcast career and put it on the path and showed me what it could be. And it also showed me the downside of this industry, the grimy people, the haters, you know what I'm saying? The people that don't like your talent, that try to slow you down and get in the way. So you see both sides of that, but it showed me that I can do it. So I'm appreciative of that opportunity. And that was really a special time. So that kind of changed the trajectory.
Yeah, it's one of those, I see the no BS that comes from you. I seen that when you brought in, when Lawrence Jackson came to the expo there, you guys paired up and put a team together for, you've seen the talent, you follow the talent, talent, and you work with talent, and you help cultivate that talent. That's something that I've seen in you and what you've been able to do. And obviously you've been doing this for a long time. Now let's talk about maybe some of those changes that you've seen from let's take the suits out of the equation, because like you said, there's a lot more corporate involved in fantasy football and sports media, basically just about everything. In produce, for bananas, for crying out loud,
yeah.
Corporate's getting involved there too. But talking about your journey, what are some of the biggest changes now, today, versus when you first started?
Well, the betting thing is critical now. You have to be able to have that in your arsenal if you're going into broadcasting and sports broadcasting. It's a part of everything now. And it's going to become incorporated even more and more because sports books have money and they need to advertise. And they're going to you're going to see these companies are going to start really buying and becoming the networks themselves and putting that spin on it. So you have to be able to be sharp when you're talking about sports betting. So you can't just come in here to this industry nowadays and be a guy that can, you know what I'm saying, draft a good fantasy team and explain to people how to do good fantasy work and what to look for in the waiver wire and average depth of target and all of that foolishness. Like, you got to be able to entertain, and you got to have some of that sports betting in your bag as well, because that's going to be a part of this moving forward. So you better read a book. You better get with it. You know what I'm saying? If you want to be able to do this, you have to be able to do it. So that was a big change. And then obviously, TikTok also, you know what I'm saying, what they've been able to do and spurn their careers on TikTok, a different type of fantasy analyst that almost has become more of like an influencer, and where they can take the game too as well. I think that's something that would say to a person like me, okay, I got to sharpen my skills. This is something that I got to get into. You know what I mean? There's more than one lane to do this. So definitely the betting, and definitely, being able to turn yourself in from a fantasy analyst to a fantasy influencer.
I think you hit it right there on the head there. I think the biggest thing we're seeing right now is the entertainment over the information almost. You get the really talented people out there that can do both.
There's not a lot of people that can entertain, though. You see what I'm saying? There's people that think they can entertain, but not a lot of these motherfuckers can entertain. You know what I'm saying? Let's just keep it 100. They really can't. You know what I'm saying? So, I'm a person that listens and ingests and takes in a lot of stuff, and it's very few people doing. It's like going through the motions. I just like a lot of high energy and stuff like that. It's a lot of going through the motions out there. So the people that, if you're trying to get into this, the people that's in it right now, they can be had.
Yeah, I'm one of those guys where you have to get my attention and you have to hold my attention because I can't focus very long. I'm looking side to side. I'm one of those guys, the more I talk, the more involved I get, the faster I talk, the more the hands start moving. If I don't have that reciprocating energy, it's like it brings you down almost to the point where you tune out altogether. Now,
no doubt, you got to be able to grab a person. One time I was told this by a cab driver, and it's very interesting when you're talking about looking. Obviously, where you're looking at us speaking, but you can hear us. You have to be able to sound good to people's ears. And if you don't have no energy, you don't sound good to people's ears. And the cab driver told me it's almost like listening to music. You almost have to try to sound like people turn on the radio to listen to a song. You almost have to try to sound like that. So if you are monotone and don't have no energy, that's a song you would turn from.
That sounds like a wise cab driver. I mean, even the cab drivers give better advice than I do half the time. But that's for another show again.
And this was so to let you know how long this ago it was. He was driving a yellow cab, which obviously you don't really see those no more in the Uber era. Shout out to everybody that owned a medallion back in them days in New York City, paid $100,000, $120,000 for those licenses, and then the city sell you under the bus, giving them big contracts to Uber. And now you sitting on that $120K loss. Feel sorry for you. Keep your head up.
Now, that sounds like a little bit of a philanthropy type of a thing out there for the people that invested there. Now, that's something maybe I didn't quite realize about you, but let's give the other people watching the show maybe a little bit of a peek behind the curtain there on Cory Parson. What is something that people don't realize about you today?
Something that people don't realize about me. That's interesting. I kind of live my life as an open book. So I try to, keep everything out there for the most part. But I don't know. I guess, I don't want to get too deep into my personal life, but, what people boy, I tell you, people know really everything about me. You know what I'm saying? But, after moving, I think everybody knows I moved already. I no longer live in New York. So I think that's maybe something that people don't know. I couldn't do it.
That's fine. How long were you in New York for? Pretty much a good portion of your life.
Basically my whole life. And I had a stint in Washington and 2 stints in South Carolina, including the current one.
We will all see the Gamecocks hat on there. If you listen on the podcast, he is repping the Gamecocks right now. Now, one thing I didn't realize there, Cory, is apparently Ving Rhames there is one of your favorite actors of all time. And there's an encounter out there somewhere along the way. There's a story to be shared here. I know there's a story.
Oh, man. I don't know if you have a PG audience, but shout out to the King, Scott Angle. But Ving Rhames, there was a movie, like I told you, when I tell you about the Roto Express in the morning, we wouldn't last on the air for a week now. We would be canceled. They would throw us off because we used to let it fly. You know what I'm saying? And in today's politically correct era, it'd be very difficult to do that show on a corporate network. You know what I'm saying? With that being said, Holiday Heart was a Christmas movie in which Ving Rhames played a transgender. You know what I'm saying? And they would always say that Holiday Heart was my favorite movie, and that I had a thing for Ving Rhames. So shout out to the King, Scott Angle. That's either Angle or Ronis with that one right there.
We'll leave it at that right now. We won't incriminate anyone on this show, but it may rhyme with Madden bonus, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. Shout out to Ronis. You know what I'm saying?
So speaking of Ronis, we talked about him. If his story, if we could write a book about his career, he said his title would be The Black Book. Now, what would your title of your book happen to be?
Title of a book about where I am at in my career. One way.
One way.
One way.
Is that your way? One way is your way? Is that
not one way? Is this journey? This there's no going back. We're going one way, straight to the top. That's it. This is a one-way ticket. That's it. There's despite the setbacks, despite all the stupid shit that happens in this industry, despite the hate and despite the corporatism, it's still one way. It's still a one-way trip to the top.
All right. Well, these next two questions kind of tie in there a little bit then. So when were you able to kind of decide that this was the direction you wanted to go with your life? When did you say that, you know what, fantasy sports, sports media, this is it. I'm going to do or die by this.
Michael Vick. When Michael Vick got arrested for dog fighting, the way people talked about him, and I can remember listening to Colin Cowherd really tear into him. He's very corporate now, Colin Cowherd, even though he's still very good, because he would never do this now. It was bold then, and he would be too afraid to do this now. He tore into him real good. And I remember picking up, I've always wanted to be in sports media, but I took a more traditional route coming out of college because, you know, you got to work and do this and do that. So I got into the game late, but I hustled hard. So I was calling the radio station to talk to Cowherd, and then it hit me. Go get, you know what? Get into the business. Despite being 35 with one in the oven, I was like, you know what? I'm going to chase it. It's late to do it, but I'm going to chase it. Fuck it.
Now, that's a bold move. That's not for everybody. Not everybody can go, yeah, this is it. I'm going to go for it.
I got a good support crew. I got a good support staff. Not staff, but a good support group. My moms, my pops, you know what I'm saying? Sister, brother-in-law, you know what I mean? So, and then, there's been some people around me that are on this journey with me. I'm able to do this because of them, and I thank them for that.
Well, you mentioned everything in this industry, the good, the bad, the ugly. It's not all sunshine and rainbows here when you're trying to get to the top, as you said earlier. Now, can you tell me about a time or situation that you had to overcome a specific personal maybe challenge, an obstacle? How did you get by that? How did you push through that? How did you dig down a little bit deeper?
After the thing happened at FNTSY, you know what I'm saying? After they railroaded myself and Scott Angle, you know, that was it. That was the worst, you know what I'm saying? And there was people some of the companies that have platforms on Sirius XM Fantasy wanted to bring me in, and the powers that be blocked it. Despite letting all kind of trash get on the radio, they continue to hold this grudge against me. You know what I'm saying? I remember walking home that night thinking, what am I going to do now? You know what I'm saying? Some of the biggest, most important people in this industry have a grudge on little old me. You know what I'm saying? And all I'm trying to do is showcase my talent and feed my children. You know what I'm saying? But in that moment, I remembered one way. You know what I'm saying? That I got to keep going. I got to keep fighting because, you know, I don't think God brought me this far to just drop me off here. You know what I'm saying? And the person with the faith that I have, I'm like, okay, that's really it. Throughout this whole thing, I just lean on my faith, Matt, because my thing is like, you know, this is in vain. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, God is kind of walking this journey with me at this point. So it's not even really in the hands of the hiring manager. It's in his hands. And I just look at it that way, and I keep pushing that way.
If this fantasy didn't work out, if sports media didn't work out, I mean, you found other ways. The freelance method there, we talked about all these different places. That's just a small portion of the different corporations that you've kind of worked for, freelance writing, but say you didn't get into this writing or radio or whatever it happens to be, what would you be doing right now? What would be a career that you'd be pursuing maybe?
My initial career coming out of college and up until I got into this business, the media, was law enforcement, but that was not nothing that I was going to stay in. That is, especially when you're doing it like I was doing it in the federal government, that was just kind of another way for people to look down on you and be judgmental of you. And I didn't really like that for people that, wasn't making the kind of money I was making, not to be superficial like that, but there's only, it's good and it's evil. You know what I'm saying? I tried to be on the side of good. And if you're looking down on people and judging them because of what you think, that's evil. Never really was a big fan of working any job, to be 100% honest with you. I've always relied on my creativity. I can remember working on posts in the federal government, and every morning when I would go to certain posts that was out of the way, I would go and I would get the Washington Post, and I would really read the Washington Post. I love to read. I'd read the Washington Post from cover to cover. And I remember, supervisors coming up to me and be like, "What are you doing?" And I'd be like, "I'm reading." And they were like, "You can't read here." And I just think about that. You're at a place where they're telling you can't read. And I'm like, that doesn't sound too right for me. But I recently, I've really got into the thought process of thinking of like retirement careers. And listen, I don't think I'm anywhere near retirement. I don't know what a retirement career looks like or what's the next journey. I still want to get to the top of this. But, I've always thought, this may sound wild because of the kind of life people think well, listen, I've lived a good life. Like a preacher, you know what I'm saying? The ministry is something that's been interesting to me. An athletic director for a high school, because I like to help children, and an author, or a couple of things that interest me as a possible next career.
I like that. I would have thought a few of those for even myself. I don't think I can get myself into. The athletic director makes a lot of sense. I've done a lot of coaching. I think I could do author. Definitely not. I mean, if anyone's read any of my writing, stay clear of that. Stick to talking on the radio or this podcast thing for me. Now, I wanted to kind of get to this a little earlier, and I kind of skipped the question a little bit, but we've all experienced heartache in sports. And I know you mentioned a preacher here, and we should forgive and forget and forgive the sins of certain athletes. But there's certain athletes you certainly cannot forgive because of the way they done you dirty at some point in your fandom. Is there an athlete out there that you just cannot forgive or maybe a fan catching a ball?
There's several.
Who's that going to be?
So let's first of all, let's start with anybody that dislikes or says anything bad about New York City. Reggie Miller, Kurt Schilling, anybody like that, they immediately become enemies in my eyes. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Pedro Martinez because, he's a legend. It was a good back and forth. We won more than we lost. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, Reggie Miller, Michael Jordan, people that's given tough times to New York. You know what I'm saying? Around the time of the decision, very upset that LeBron James didn't join. Randy Johnson was terrible as a New York Yankee. He didn't fit the bill. He wasn't right for what we were trying to do. You know what I'm saying? John Riggins, growing up as a young Dallas Cowboy fan, also very tough as well to deal with him. So those are some of the people that I can't forget. Charles Smith for missing that shot. The Knicks actually would have beat the Bulls. So, that shot underneath the rim, that was a tough one right there. So those are some of the I feel like there's one more though that I can't. Oh,
I was waiting for this one.
What is his name? I call him Bigfoot because I've always heard about his talent, but he's only shown it a couple of times. Tight end, he played for the Packers. He went to the University of South Carolina. Why can't I think of his name right now? That was played for the Jared Cook.
Jared Cook there, yep.
Jared Cook. Packers, Jared Cook. Jared Cook is always, at one point, Jared Cook was always on the waiver wire. And Jared Cook would have these tasty, this is a Jared Cook week. And I would pick up Jared Cook, and Jared Cook would give me a fucking 0 all the time. Whenever I put Jared Cook in my lineup, it was a fucking 0. And then one time I put him in a lineup, a 0, didn't cut him, benched him, went off for like 30 on the bench. I thought it was personal at that point. But then Dallas Cowboys, Green Bay Packers. The 2-1-4 year. Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott, rookie year. One of the better Cowboy teams of the last 30 years. That catch on the sideline. Matt, I had tickets to the NFC Championship game. All they had to do was stop Jared Cook on that play. And I would have been in Dallas the next weekend for the NFC Championship game. And it didn't happen. I still went to Dallas next weekend because my +1 was hot. You know what I'm saying? So we still had a time, but we ended up watching the Dirty Birds beat the Packers before they went on to lose 28-3. I mean, before they went to, before that historic loss to the Patriots. So, yeah, Jared Cook.
All right. Well, that sounds like a tradition unlike any other. Jared Cook on the waiver wire too, Cory Parson. Let's talk about some other traditions around college football. I know you love yourself some college football. You got the South Carolina hat on. It's time to do our blind rankings. I'm going to give different types of traditions around college football. You're going to rank them 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Once they put them once you lock that ranking in, that is where they're going to stay. So, you ready for this?
Let's do it.
All right. One of my favorite college traditions here right now. Enter Sandman at night, Virginia Tech. Where do you got that on the list?
Enter Sandman. Always cool. I remember a couple years ago, Sam Howell entering the season for the Carolina Tar Heels as a Heisman contender. First Friday night of the season, goes to Blacksburg, into the Sandman. Sam Howell no longer a Heisman Trophy contender. I would go number 4. Definitely a raucous environment into the Sandman.
All right. Something down in Alabama. Sweet home Alabama. Where would you put that?
5.
5. Not there, eh?
No, I'm an Iron Bowl guy. Better when it's in Auburn. Definitely great matchup. Alabama, Georgia. Alabama, Clemson. Things like that. Big Nick Saban guy. You know what I'm saying? Love Alabama quarterbacks. But the pageantry is, to me, that pageantry in Tuscaloosa on a regular Saturday is not the same.
All right, so we got Sweet Home Alabama at number 5. We got Enter Sandman at night at Virginia Tech at number 4. Army versus Navy. Where does that rank?
Damn it. I wish I could have put this at 5 or 6 or 100. I am not an Army Navy guy. I don't like the triple option football. I don't. I get the pageantry of it. So I'm going to put it at 3. I get the pageantry of it. You know, this year for the first time, it does not have the game to itself. It's going to be college football playoff. It's going to be college football playoff games, if I'm not mistaken. No, it's going to be the Celebration Bowl. It's going to be that weekend.
Yes. 2 random bowls are in there now.
Yes, the Celebration Bowl is that weekend. That's right. It's the weekend before the college football playoff. Still think you got the Heisman Trophy, but I know the Celebration Bowl is going to be that weekend. And my South Carolina State Bulldogs should be back in the Celebration Bowl this year. They just hired a head coach. His name is Chennis Berry. He is going to be an Eddie Robinson type head coach. He is going to be a legendary head coach. You heard it here first. I go 3, but I'm not a big Army-Navy guy because I don't like the 9 to 6. I can't do that.
All right. Well, one of my favorite ones, it's a newer one. It's the Kenneck Wave there in Iowa, where, end of the first quarter, everyone turns, 70,000 plus fans, players, turn to the Children's Hospital, and they give the kids a little bit of a salute there. Where would you put that, 1 or 2?
I go 2 with that one right there. I like Iowa's environment. I think it's a good home field environment. I actually was thinking with this college football game getting ready to come out, I actually was thinking I'm going to need a middle of the country team too. So I was thinking about Iowa, but another low scoring program.
Yeah, there's been some pretty bad games there from Iowa. I mean, they come out with great tight ends. Scoring, not so much.
Shout out to Caitlin Clark.
Caitlin Clark.
Shout out to Iowa, even though, that's the kind of a basketball rival. But shout out to Caitlin Clark, though.
Man, she's going through some things there in the WNBA, and she's kind of turning the other cheek a little bit. So it's been interesting to kind of watch that whole.
Yeah, it's been a disaster. First, WNBA is not prime time. They fumbled the bag. They're going to keep fumbling the bag, and it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But Caitlin Clark, hold your head. They're coming for you, but hold your head.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. They're watching a little bit from now and then. And you know what? Even I've kind of caught a little bit of the WNBA here in the last couple seasons. So shout out. They're doing something right. But like you said, the bag is being fumbled here. We could have done the top 5 fumbles in the WNBA. In a blind
You're right
here on the list.
We could have done. You're right.
We got the butt fumble. We've got all kinds of things we could have gone with there. And then I guess by default, number 1 would be the Penn State whiteout, which – you know what? Maybe you're not a big fan. Like here in Canada, we've got the Winnipeg Jets that did the whiteout. Love it. The Vancouver Canucks kind of basically did it at first when Roger Nelson waved the white flag there on the hockey stick. Iconic moment, the whiteout for the Winnipeg Jets. What do you got to say about the Penn State whiteout?
So, if number 1 wasn't the Penn State whiteout, I was going to say number 1 should be the Penn State whiteout. The Penn State whiteout is the best tradition in college football. Florida State throwing down the spear at half court with the tomahawk chop going, that's very good too. But it is the whiteout at Penn State. There is something about that moment. And here's the thing. It's like, this is, to me, right, the biggest thing it's 2 things that you can really make this college football playoff spectacular this year is for Penn State to make the college football playoff and have a home game, because you'll really see it then. It is the most electric atmosphere in college football, the whiteout at Penn State. And you know what? And it's probably not even really close. It is unbelievable to see that.
It seems like it kind of saved your list there with the Army-Navy game, kind of getting 3, but having that whiteout kind of like justifies the whole list there altogether.
The whiteout is very good. It's Duke, North Carolina-esque.
That's on the bucket list for me. That a Carolina Duke game, that is on my bucket list. I'm a big Carolina fan going back who knows when it comes to the college basketball. I still remember Antoine Jameson, Brian Hayward, Vince Carter, Shammond Williams. That was kind of my jam. And absolutely hating on Steve Wojciechowski there for the Duke Blue Devils, slapping the damn floor every time.
And they slap the floor and then get cut up. You know what I'm saying? It was Reese, Marvin Reese back in the day. St. Nicholas of Tallentine High School was the best player on that team, and he went to North Carolina, and I followed him to North Carolina and became a big Tar Heel basketball fan. So shout out to the Tar Heels. That kind of was my college basketball team in my youth. My sister's a Tar Heel, so shout out to them. But men's college basketball is not good right now. I'll be honest with you. UConn is a dynasty, and you don't know the athletes. In women's college basketball, you know the athletes.
Well, we've seen that here in last year's NCAA tournament there. The women's game was actually getting the higher viewership there compared to the men's game. Now, let's go back to that sports media fantasy football thing. What has fantasy football taught you about yourself?
Oh, that's interesting. It taught me that I really have a very good football mind. Some people disagree with that because some of my takes, but I don't mind saying a hot take. I'm not embarrassed by anything that I've said, like going for Mac, like really putting money on Mac Jones to win the MVP. I did that and I got killed for it. But the same people put money on Trey Lance to win the MVP, and he got cut. They also like Justin Fields to win MVPs and so on and so forth. So, we all have our moments. But yeah, I can really watch a team once, and I got him.
Well, Jalen McMillan's my guy here this year that I'm going to catch a lot of flack if he doesn't have success. I may have thrown out on the Twitter machine that he is the next Puka Nacua. He's this year's Puka Nacua. I didn't mean 1,500 yards receiving. What I meant was he's a guy that's going under the radar, that's going to have a good season that people kind of are underestimating. Huge player there at Washington, played hurt last year, didn't get quite the numbers that he normally would have got. I mean, that's not here. We're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about you. And let's talk about relationships, because relationships are important. We talked about Scott the King Angle a little bit earlier. Adam Ronis' name's come up. I know Nando's been a big part of your life here too with the Better Sports Network, Matt Deutsch's name. So let's talk about some of these people maybe that you respect around the industry in a positive light who have kind of helped you along the way.
It starts with, I don't want to ever like rank people, but it's obviously Nando, Scott, big parts of my life, and very thankful for those two gentlemen right there and what they have been able to do and how they have helped me, you know what I'm saying, and have been allies of mine. So nothing but love for the King and Nando. Obviously, Adam Rowan is a part of that as well, you know what I'm saying, and Matt Deutsch too, you know what I'm saying. It's, you know, people think that there's this, you know, a grudge between me and Matt Deutsch, and I love that man, you know what I'm saying. He is a person who, you know, has given me an opportunity, and that's all I've ever asked for, you know what I'm saying. You know, the fallout with me and Sirius XM. I mean, me and him were players in that, but there was things above me and him that was really what drove that home. You know what I'm saying? But he's a person that I have a lot of love and respect for as well. That's kind of the core of the group right there. You know what I'm saying? I want to shout out to Brian Hamilton as well. You know what I'm saying? Sirius XM guy that I work with at NBC also, you know, definitely a very, very important, you know what I mean? And, you know, a lot of people, you know, that have helped me, you know, but those are like the main guy. Oh, and I gotta, you know, God bless his soul, my man, Jim Day. I never want to forget Jim Day, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, his passing.
Fantasy Taz, right?
Yeah, Fantasy Taz, his passing recently and stuff like that. But Jim Day's a dude. I love Jim Day, you know what I'm saying? And I remember like getting into this industry and trying to be a player and wanting to do things, and really like the first person who put me in the experts league, who brought me on a podcast for me to try to show what I had, was my man Fantasy Taz, Jim Day. So rest in peace to Jim Day. Pour a little liquor for the big homie.
Gotta love that one. That's an end that I haven't heard for a while, so I'm glad you kind of brought that up.
And he needs to be in the Fantasy Sports Hall of Fame. Jim Day needs to be in the Fantasy Sports Hall of Fame.
I couldn't agree with that more. Now, when you look across everyone that's kind of influenced your life, I know you're your own man. You've kind of developed your own style, but is there anyone that you've kind of pulled a little of their style and kind of used it to make it part of your own?
I guess my two favorite people in sports media, you know, Stuart Scott, obviously, that was such a tremendous feeling, you know, for me to see Stuart Scott. And it's not so much over he was another black dude and stuff like that. It's more of a fact that he was like me. Like, if I wanted to be authentic, I was never going to be Greg Gumbel. You know what I'm saying? That wasn't going to be the role that I took, or the person that I was going to be. But seeing Stephen A. Smith also, but seeing Stuart Scott first, you know what I'm saying? That really stoked the fire. Got a chance to meet Stuart Scott as well. Another person, you know, God bless his soul, rest in peace to the great Stuart Scott. Definitely was a big influence on me coming up and wanting to be in sports media and do what I do. Obviously, the great Howard Cosell, you know what I'm saying? Somebody, you know, to see that as a kid, you know what I'm saying? And be like, oh man, this guy, you know, is doing something that I wouldn't mind doing and stuff like that. Another person that was very influential to me coming up. And then Mike Breen, you know what I'm saying? A lot of people don't know this, but I've been around for a long time. And I remember when Mike Breen was the update anchor on the Imus in the Morning program. And Mike Breen, if you do not know it, Mike Breen has one of the best sense of humor of anybody in sports media, but you don't really get to experience it when he's the main play-by-play guy. But when he was on Imus in the Morning, he was literally the best part of the show. So shout out to Mike Breen. But Mike Breen is my guy to go along with Stuart Scott. and then obviously Howard Cosell, and then obviously later on was definitely I've become a big fan of Stephen A. Smith, and you know what I'm saying. And as I'm listening to his memoir right now, he's really going up on my list as well.
All right, one last question, kind of a two-parter here, so I'll kind of give you the one part and then the second part. First part, one last piece of advice for anyone who's trying to kick in that door into the fantasy industry.
Be yourself. Do it yourself and be yourself.
100% authentic, genuine. People can smell the bullshit, the BS, right?
There you go. Be yourself. Do it yourself and be yourself. There's a lot of inauthentic people look like they're shining right now. Trust me, it doesn't take long. Be yourself. Yourself is the best version of you.
All right, now my last question here. I've got about 12 kids. They range from 28 to 9, throwing some foster kids, and I'm dealing with like 1-year-olds here as well. So I need some parenting advice from Cory Parson. What do you got? Best piece of parenting advice? Maybe a piece of advice you wish you would have known maybe 15, 16 years ago, maybe.
Well, you're not perfect. So going through the parenting journey is, trials and tribulation. You're not perfect. Don't get too hard on yourself. You know what I'm saying? But I think the most important thing is to be connected. Be connected. It's not the big moments. It's the little moments. It really is. You will be surprised what a child remembers. It could just be something of, you know what I'm saying, a walk home from the bus stop one day. And that could be something that a kid remembers for the rest of their life. But be connected. Be connected. It's not just the big moments. It's really the little moments. But you have to be connected in order to do that.
Love that. And Cory, let the people know where they can find you, what you have coming down the pipe here next. Let the people know what content they can expect.
Yeah, I'll probably put a draft guide out sometime in the next couple weeks or so for the fantasy season coming up. Follow me at the Fantasy Exec on Twitter, to get that work. And everything else, follow that because I may have some announcements coming up. We'll see.
All right, make sure to check him out on Twitter, the Fantasy Exec. If you want to follow it, he's dropping all that knowledge right there every single time. So if you want to find a way to support him, that's probably the best way to do that right now on the social media. And hey, Cory, you're as cool as the other side of the pillow. Booyah! There's only one way to the top of the fantasy industry, and that's by checking out the Fantasy Exec. We'll see you next time. Take care.